Hello, I'm Harry Cole, The Sun's political editor, here on College Green, outside the House of Parliament. Jeremy Hunt has just delivered his budget, probably the last budget before Britain goes to the polls later this year. And as a surprise, it was a very, very political budget. There was blows traded with Labour, lots of political knockabout, but in the end, actually not a huge amount in this budget. The big headline, eye-catching 2% cut to national insurance. It was exactly what they did in November. That didn't move the polls. Will the combined effort perhaps be enough? We'll have to wait and see. But Jeremy Hunt firing the starting gun there on a general election, and if it's anything to go by like today, it's going to be a very bad-tempered and very long election campaign, because there's no love lost between Tory and Labour in the chamber today. It was a very, very vicious sort of back and forth that will drag on for a few days now. Whether Jeremy Hunt's done enough to change the Tory poll fortunes, see that 20-point gap start to close, we'll have to wait and see.
Because we have asked those with the broadest shoulders to pay a bit more, today I go further. From April the 6th, employee national insurance will be cut by another 2p from 10% to 8%. And self-employed national insurance will be cut from 8% to 6%. It means an additional £450 a year for the average employee, or £350 for someone self-employed.
It was the headline figure. We knew it was coming, a 2p cut to national insurance, combined with November's 2p cut to national insurance as well. That's 4p off national insurance in just 6 months. And what we're getting to see is a Tory manifesto coming to sight. Jeremy Hunt making it clear he wants to abolish national insurance. People pay national insurance and income tax on their wages. It is a very complicated system. That's one of the many quirks of our tax system, and it's clear that a dividing line for the general election is going to be phasing out national insurance. That was unexpected, but it's a little bit of a pie crust promise. It's a dream of tomorrow. You know, the Chancellor is able to say, look, I've cut 4% off of it already. It's easier to abolish an 8% tax than it is a 12% tax, but there's some big bills coming down the line for the government on defence spending, on massive compensation packages, on Horizon, on the infected blood scandal. So there's lots of spending commitments that need to be required after the next election. So whether it ever actually happens remains to be seen.
I confirm that from this April, the high-income child benefit charge threshold will be raised from £50,000 to £60,000. We will raise the top of the taper, at which it's withdrawn, to £80,000. That means no one earning under £60,000 will pay the charge, taking 170,000 families out of paying it altogether. And because of the higher taper and threshold, nearly 500,000 families with children will save an average of £1,300 next year.
So the biggest announcement by far was a cut to 2p in national insurance. There was also a surprise, not quite a rabbit out of the hat, a surprise announcement that the rules in which earners who receive child benefit had to start paying that back kicked in at £50,000. That's been raised to £60,000 in a way to try and make that system fairer. We can see a family with one high earner and be penalised in a way that families with two lesser earners are able to keep more of their child benefit. There was a lot of tax cuts, yes, in terms of headline figures, but also lots of taxes have gone up. An increase in air passenger duty for business flights will please some climate campaigners, but hit people in their wallets travelling around.
To discourage non-smokers from taking up vaping, we're today confirming the introduction of an excise duty on vaping products from October 26 and publishing a consultation on its design. Because vapes can also play a positive role in helping people quit smoking, we'll introduce a one-off increase in tobacco duty at the same time to maintain the financial incentive to choose vaping over smoking. I'll make a one-off adjustment to rates of air passenger duty on non-economy flights only to account for high inflation in recent years, and I'll provide HMRC with the resources they need to ensure everyone pays the tax they owe, leading to an increase in revenue collected of over £4.5 billion across the forecast period.
Then a new vape tax, which was a little bit confusing because the government said that they wanted to encourage people to vape, so they're putting up taxes on smoking, but also introducing new taxes on vaping. So some mixed messaging there, but again, very clear that this government does not like smokers and are going after them in however they consume their nicotine products. They're going to be paying for it in the wallet. Then a big headline move, which Labour Party were enjoying having seen come to fruition, was the abolition of the non-dom status, which which sees foreign people who come to the UK be able to avoid paying tax on their earnings outside of the UK. That's going to be abolished. Jeremy Hunt saying that's going to raise about £2.6 billion. But frankly, I've seen budgets with more meat in them. This wasn't the biggest budget in terms of policies and movements around. What is clear, the headroom that Jeremy Hunt had to play with for those pre-election giveaways was nowhere near what he would have liked. So there was a lot of noise, not much light today.
I thought they cared about people on the lowest incomes.
Jeremy Hunt fired the starting gun there on a general election campaign. It was a very political budget statement. There were lots of attacks on Labour, lots of attacks on the Lib Dems. He was even also sort of picking up his own local pub. He was talking about being a Surrey boy. He was talking about his constituency a lot. He was name-checking lots of people in marginal seats, really trying to help them out as the Tories are 20 points behind in the polls, looking at an election this year. So Jeremy Hunt clearly worried about his own constituency, his own re-election battle in Surrey. So yeah, there was a lot there for what we can be beginning to see the shaping, forming of the Tory manifesto, some clear dividing lines on tax. But it slightly fell flat somewhat, given that we're currently enjoying the highest tax burden since the war. So to have the Conservatives trying to beat up Labour constantly on taxes jarred a little bit, but you can see the dividing lines coming. And if it's anything like today, which was very bad-tempered in the House of Commons, it's going to be a very long election campaign.
So instead, I've listened to my right honourable friends for Stoke-on-Trent North, Dudley North, Witham and others, as well as the Sun newspaper's Keep It Down campaign. I have, as a result, decided to maintain the 5p cut and freeze fuel duty for another 12 months.
Only a true optimist in Downing Street is expecting any immediate movement on the polls. They're waiting for the election campaign proper to begin before they're hoping to see a tightening. The national insurance hike didn't really change anything in November, so the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing, hoping for a different outcome. But we'll have to wait and see whether the combined effect of those is enough to move the polls. But given the faces of slightly glum-looking Tory MPs as that budget speech really dragged on, I don't think they're holding much hope either.
So today I've decided to extend the alcohol duty freeze until February 2025. This benefits 38,000 pubs across the UK, and on top of the £13,000 saving a typical pub will get from the 75% business rates discount I announced in the autumn. We value our hospitality industry and are backing the great British pub.
Labour were delighted at the fact that Jeremy Hunt basically wholesale stole their biggest, one of their biggest policy, which is the abolition of non-dom tax status, which allows wealthy foreigners who have earnings outside of the UK but live resident in the UK to avoid paying tax. Now that's gone. That's £2.6 billion. Bit of a headache for Rachel Reeves, that, because she's already spent that money on lots of other projects and pledged it elsewhere. So she's going to have to go back to her own sums, her own apparently fully costed manifesto plans, and redo them. There's a feeling that Labour were waiting till this budget before they set out any significant spending or taxation plans, because they knew that the power was with the Chancellor to basically steal all their ideas that they like, reject a few others, and send them basically back to square one in costing all of their manifestos. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to be in that. Labour are determined to get it going, that there's going to be an election in May. They want to call Rishi Sunak a chicken if he doesn't do it. Number 10 are going to try and drag this out till October at least. So we'll have to wait and see what Labour's options are, but there was a lot of shouting today.